Next we'll talk about something called, have you heard of something called homeostasis? What is homeostasis? Book එක බලන්න ඉස්සෙල්ලා කියන්න බෑ. Head knowledge එකෙන් කියන්න බෑ what is homeostasis? What is homeostasis? For the definition, you are going to get confused. Right? For the definition, it's confusing. What do you all know about homeostasis? Balance between? Balance within the body. Okay. Any other definition? It's not wrong, I didn't say it's wrong. It's not wrong. Tell me. Any other definition? We are still in understanding words and definitions. We have still not started the topic, and this is a common thing that you all need to know by now. What is homeostasis? Okay, you said balance of the body. Balance of the body between what? No, your answer is right. I'm asking. So you say it's balancing the body, no? Balancing the body. Overall. All bodily systems balancing between what? That's what I'm asking. All the changes that can happen internally and externally. The ability of the body keeping your system normal despite of all the internal and the external barriers is what you call homeostasis. Clear? No? No. Right? Say, even if it's hot outside, example. Right? Yeah, we know it's hot outside, we feel it, but doesn't mean that as soon as you go out, you're going to faint. Right? You don't faint, no? Right? Or if you go inside a severely cold room, doesn't mean that you're going to freeze to death the instant that you go. To a certain extent, your body will be adapting to it. So the possibility or the function that your body keeps it stable despite of whatever the challenges are outside is what you call homeostasis. Right? It balances out from whatever the challenges or whatever that's hitting you from out or internally, right, due to other illnesses. Yet it allows you to function normally. Just because it's hot doesn't mean that you're going to stay inside. You're still coming to class, you're still going to go to work, right? You're going to adapt to it. They're not confused there. Right? The ability of the body balancing it out between the internal and the external forces that you're going to have is what you call homeostasis. Give me a few examples. Few things that you all know. Body temperature, okay. VDK we spoke about one or two things. Give me a few examples. Right? Thermoregulation is the temperature regulation, right? You also have the fluid balance, blood pressure and sugar levels in your system, right? These are few examples of few systems that's going to balance your entire body. Okay? Clear? Right? Okay, what is allostasis? That is not a very common word, but something that you, being in the medical profession, you should have come across. What do you mean by allostasis? Now we know about what homeostasis is. Don't complicate it, right? Just the state of being in which all bodily systems in balance, right? Or in other words, the state of all systems keeping it in balance regardless of whatever the forces internally and externally. Then you all know the definition. And then try to understand few examples as to what homeostasis is. Okay? What do you mean by allostasis? What do you think it is? Because homeostasis and allostasis always comes together. You don't isolate it. It always comes coupled up. They are a couple always. So tell me, what do you think it is? Allostasis is keeping your system right steady even though there are internal changes. Just like we spoke about the temperature, even if you are getting adapted to the heat, or even if you are in a winter country and then you are getting adapted to the cold, right? Still your body is stable. You are not going to die soon, or rather you are not going to die at all. Okay, so you are not going to die. So the capacity of keeping a system stable through the changes is what we call allostasis. Homeostasis is balancing out between the external and the internal challenges, whatever that comes across your system. Is it clear? Are the two definitions clear for you or not? Yes or no? Right? Right? Process of achieving homeostasis through physiological and behavioral change. So that's why I said both comes together. Homeostasis, it balances out the system, right? Regardless of whatever challenge it is. Allostasis is going to change your system, but yet it's going to keep it stable, right? So those are the two definitions that you all need to understand. Okay? As long as you all know the definition of these words, because in the other chapters that we are going to talk, we are not going to talk in definition, we are just going to use the word. So if you all know the definition, then it's easy for you all to understand what and how what we are talking about. Okay, we are going to talk about different mechanisms of cell response. Who knows the cell cycle? What is cell cycle and what? Annadam pota hoya. Pota inai. Oiti ke inai. Cell cycle. Tell me who knows about the cell cycle. Tell me the phases of the cell cycle. cell cycle. What are the steps of the cell cycle? Phases of cell cycle. Not that we are going to talk about in detail, but I want just to see whether you all know cell cycle. Okay. Guys, cell cycle එක that's the දන්නවනේ මම ඒකේ පටන් ගන්න ක්ලාස් එක cell cycle එක දන්නේ නැත්නම් how do you see the cell cycle? How do you see the cell cycle? How many phases are there in the cell cycle? Tell me that first. 4. Okay, what are the 4? If you say 4, what are the 4 phases of cell cycle? You spoke about mitosis, okay? That is, we are talking about the cell division, right? That is clear? Okay, mitosis, meiosis, it's always about cell division. What are the other phases? G1S, G2, okay. What is the resting phase called as? Resting phase එක අහලා තියෙනවනේ? Resting phase is known as what? Now cell division is known as mitosis, right? So resting phase is known as resting state is known as what phase? G what? 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or what? G what? ඊළඟ ක්ලාස් එකේ මුලින්ම අහන්නේ cell cycle එක හරි G what? G0. When you say resting phase, that is the cells have already what has happened with the cells? මොකද වෙලා තියෙන cells වලට? resting phase එකේදී මොකද වෙන්නේ? Resting phase is where the cells have stopped dividing and it has already left the cycle, right? That is what you call resting phase. Okay, and then interphase. Interphase is where you get the G1. What else? Interphase is G1. G1, okay, G2. G1 එකේ මොකද වෙන්නේ? What happens in the G1? It's a sort of a checkpoint. We call those phases as checkpoints. So G1, what happens? G1 state, what happens? Cell. We are talking about the cell cycle, so it's going to be cell growth. I'm asking about what's happening at G1 specifically. What is happening at G1? That is the phase where where they check for DNA synthesis, whether the DNA is copied exactly. Right? You've heard about DNA copying, right? The DNA has to copy into every cell, right? G1 is where you check for the DNA synthesis. G2, now we have the first phase, which was the resting, right? We have the second one, G1, right? What about the G2? Preparation of what? What? I really can't hear. Preparation of? You are checking the cell whether it's ready to enter the mitosis phase. Right? So you have the resting phase, you have the G1, G2, and the last one is? S phase is coming with G1, where we spoke about DNA synthesis. Right? G1 is where you check whether the DNA is copied exactly. Right? When you talk about S phase, it's about DNA synthesis. Right? So if you take the 4 states, if you draw the circle like this and you have 4 checkpoints, you have the mitosis, you have G1, G2, and the resting phase. Right? Those are the main 4 components that you will list. Right? Under G1, it will come with S phase also, which is making the DNA ready to be synthesized, typically to copy to other cells. This is the first question that I am going to ask in your second class. Right? Okay. Three different mechanisms of cell response. Right? First is reversible cell injury. What do you call reversible cell injury? What is reversible cell injury? Tissues? Cells that can repair. Any other definition? What do you call by reversible cell injury? Any other definition? We have one definition, cells that can be repaired. Is it right or wrong? Okay, reversible cell injury is where cells will be repaired by itself, right, after whatever the acute reason is being taken off. Right? Okay, cells die or cells are injured due to a certain reason. No, so once that reason is being taken off the system, it has the capability of returning to its normal state. Right? Until then, since there is low energy, when the cells are damaged, there is low energy, so the cells won't be able to carry out its normal functions. Right? Adaptation. Okay, we talk about hypertrophy. Adaptation, right? You adapt, the cells are being adapted to different states, what your body is going through. Right? Few examples are hypertrophy, hyperplasia, entropy, and metaplasia. Right? And the third one is cell death. Right? Cells are no longer useful, cells cannot be, or rather cells won't be functioning of its original state or the functions that they have been assigned to. Okay? Right, cell response due to injury. Right? We spoke about first one. Right? Injury depends on the type, the duration and the severity of the injury. Right? If you are talking about cells are being destroyed due to an injury, that is the type, the duration, the severity of the injury. A normal a knife cut is also cell injury. Right? Your cells have been destroyed, damaged to certain extent. Right? So it depends on the type, how you are being injured, the duration and the severity. What do you mean by severity? If you take a knife cut, when you say severity, how do you take it? How do you define? Whether the wound is very deep, it's very big, the exposed area, right? That is what you call the severity. So anything, any injury, right? It can be an accident, right? It can be anything that happens at home, right? Anything traumatic is going to depend on type, duration and severity of the injury, right? And also sometimes type, status and genetic makeup of the cell, right? If the injuries are genetically modified, right, or if the injuries are responsible for something that comes genetically, right, then that is where the cell cycle falls into place. That all that we spoke about DNA and DNA synthesis and all those things. Okay, clear? Reversible cell injury. What is hydrophic? Hydrophic. Hydrophic. Some you can write as hydrophic also, but usually hydrophic. What is hydrophic swelling? Leave the swelling one. What do you mean by hydrophic? What do you mean by hydrophic? Normal, general term, general scientific term for what? Increase in cells. Hypertrophic never hydrophic. Fluid. You use the word hydrophic when it comes anything that related to fluid. Whatever fluid it is, it's going to be hydrophic. Right? It's going to be hydrophic whatever fluid it is. So hydrophic swelling, in other terms, edema kela hati na. There is also another term for hydrophic swelling is edema. Okay? There is, so when you say edema, what happens? There is excess of fluids accumulating in the cells. Right? So once the reason for the fluid accumulation is been taken off, the cells will go into its original state. That is why you put it as under reversible cell injury. Right? It is an injury, but something that can be reversed. Right? You find the cause why you have excess fluid accumulating, and then you treat that cause, or you take that cause off, and then you understand, or then you give the capacity for the cells to get into its original normal state. Okay? What do you mean by intracellular accumulations? Before that, when you talk about edema, you also should know that there is a higher possibility if it's not treated on time, right? The cells will keep on collecting fluid, and at one point it will start bursting. That's going to be a more complicated or a more severe state, where then you will have fluid everywhere. Right? Also, if it's a specific organ that is swelling or accumulating fluid, then its structures change, functions change, right? The weight of the organ changes, right? Those are the simple common things you all need to know. Okay, intracellular accumulation. What do you mean by intracellular? Just break the word into two. Intracellular is inside the cell. Accumulation. Okay, so in collections inside the cell. Excessive amounts of normal intracellular substances. What are intracellular substances? Potassium, iron. Okay. What are intracellular substances? What are intracellular substances? Intracellular substances are lipids, proteins, right? Say carbohydrates, glycogen, all those things, right? Substances that's been required for the cell to function normally. If you don't take enough nutritious food, then eventually you will have facing different changes, right? So whatever that's required for the cells to survive, right? Lipids, proteins, vitamins, glycogen, carbohydrates, whatever it is, right? Excessive amounts of those is also going to cause cell injury, right? Excess vitamin. What do you call excess vitamin in your system? What is the one word that you call for excess vitamin? When you have too much of vitamins, what do you call that condition? Excess vitamins. When you have too much of vitamins, what are you going to call that condition? පොඩිලමයි නම් කණෙන් අල්ලන්න දෙන්න පොඩිලමයි නෙවෙයි ඉඳ කණෙන් අල්ලන්නේ. Vitamins ඇගේ වැඩි නම් what do you call that? Come on. What the? Excess vitamin in your system. What do you call too much of vitamins in your system? What do you call that? Okay, when your blood pressure is too much, what do you call that? Hypertension. So when you have excess vitamins, what do you call? Hypervitamin what? Huh? You have something called hypervitaminosis. Greek ka kehde naane? You are nurses, you all should know what hypervitaminosis is. Okay? So there is a term for any condition, anything that is above the normal level and below the normal level, just like blood pressure, hypertension and hypotension. If it's increased, you call hyper. If it's low, below the normal average or below the normal range, then you call hypo. Right? So everything that we have in our system will always have hyper and hypo. Right? So that is also a condition, that is also a disease. Just like you take tablets for high blood pressure or low blood pressure, every condition will have medication. Right? So excess amounts will also lead to cell injury. Right? So once you treat that, once you reduce your intake, if it's example vitamin, if you reduce your intake of vitamins or proteins, right, if you are a person who loves meat a lot, right, then there is a higher possibility where you will have too much of proteins in your system when time to come. Right? If you can't live without meat, there are people like that. Right? Udetai, davaltai, rayatai, tunata mone, and they won't eat without meat. So that kind of people will have excess protein in their system. Right? Also calcium. Right? You have heard of calcium deposits. So that is, if you have excess calcium in your system, it will start depositing in your internal organs. Right? So those are things that can cause reversible cell injury. Right? Accumulation of abnormal substances produced by cell due to faulty metabolism or synthesis. What do you mean by faulty metabolism? What is metabolism? What is metabolism? What is metabolism? Huh? What do you mean by metabolism? ඒකට උත්තර දුන්නත් නැත්නම් ඉතින් හරි හිතා ගන්න පුළුවන්. What is metabolism? What kind of process is it? Why do you need metabolism in your system? What kind of process is metabolism? To generate energy to your body. Okay, if you give the definition of metabolism, what is it? Definition of metabolism is not energy. The answer is not wrong, that's not what I'm saying, but when you talk about metabolism itself, how do you define metabolism? Breakdown of substances, okay, you're right. Through what? What mechanism? Metabolism is a chemical process, right? Unless you use that word chemical process, it's not going to be right. Right? Whatever you said was right, but you needed the word chemical process. It's a chemical process that needs in your system, that is happening in your system for the cells to survive. Okay, for the living organisms to function normally. It's a chemical process. Okay, so abnormal substances produced by faulty metabolism. If the chemical bonding or the chemical process is abnormal, right, obviously it's going to have an adverse reaction. So whatever that's going to cause, those things will have also a reversible cell injury. Clear? Okay, and then accumulation of pigments and particles. Right, particles are small bits and things that enter into your system. Right, it can also be like, it can lead from a traumatic injury where you have a lot of substances accumulating in your system where you can't see it. Right, so those are the three highlighted ones when you talk about intracellular accumulations. Okay, questions here? Any questions up to this part? Yes or no? Until what we did right now. Right? Then cellular adaptation. That is, adaptation is how you adapt yourself, how you change. Okay, just like we as humans will change into different circumstances, right? We adapt ourselves. If we are living in a city, then we adapt ourselves to the city life. Right? If we are living in a village, then we need to adapt ourselves to live in that area, right? So just like that, we're talking about cellular adaptations, right? Cellular adaptations. That's in your book, neither. Okay, atrophy. What is atrophy? Atrophic animal. Degeneration of cells. So one example, if you talk about the brain, degeneration of cells will cause what? What will happen with the brain? Example, I'm giving just asking an example. We're talking about the brain atrophy. What will happen? Okay, you'll have memory loss, yes. Okay, you'll have something like dementia, yes. What else? Okay. If you have atrophy of the liver, what's going to happen? No? I can't. Okay. What else? Okay. What can happen? Also the surface areas will be reduced, right? Atrophy is degeneration, right? It will start shrinking, right? So whatever you all said was right, but also the surface area of any organ or tissue, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be an organ, it can also be a tissue, right? Organ or tissue will have lesser surface area. Okay? So that is basically about atrophy. What is hypertrophy? What is hypertrophy? Right? Ogalange book ke diyano atrophy brain. Right? It shows clearly between a normal picture and a atrophic picture. Right? Atrophic brain. Right? Also atrophy. Give me a few reasons for atrophy. Why you can have atrophic state of an organ or a tissue. Aging, yes. Number one cause is aging. What else? Can be trauma, yes. Lack of blood supply. What are the other stuff? Other diseases can cause, yes. Lack of nutrients, right? If you don't have proper meals, proper intakes, that can also not just 1 or 2 days. You can starve for 1 or 2 days, but what I'm saying is for a long time, right? People don't have access to proper nutrient food for a long time, can also have atrophic state. Okay, what is hypertrophy? Increased cell mass that leads to what? Increased cell mass will lead to increased functions of the cell, and that will cause what? What can you have? What can hypertrophy lead to? Okay, it has increased cell mass, increased cell function. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Okay, so take an example. If it's the liver, what can possibly happen? Size increases, obviously, yes. You can accumulate a lot of toxins. The size increases, the accumulation of toxin increases, right? Accumulation of fluid increases, right? Then you'll obviously have swelling, right? You'll have hepatomegaly. What else? Okay. Anything else? Anything else that can happen? What are the functions of the liver? Tell me the functions of the liver. Huh? Ayyan kya na? Detoxification. Okay, tell me the functions of the liver. Okay, toxins. Okay, fine. Huh? There is only one function there. The liver has only one function. Huh? Okay. Thermal regulation. Okay, fine. destroy? Liver doesn't destroy expired red blood cells. What it does is it maintains the iron level and it lets the dyed red blood cells come and deposit in it. You get it? Right? The red blood cell can be destroyed, but it still has iron. Right? So, from a different mechanism, different process, what happens is it helps come and store the iron in the liver. Okay? What else? What are the other things the liver does? Liver එකක් නැතුව ඉන්න පුළුවන්ද කියන්නේ ඔක්කොටම ඉස්සර. බෑ. So then what in what areas does it help? Hormones, liver. Okay, fine. Few basic things. Helps in protein synthesis. Okay, helps in protein synthesis. What else? What else does it help? It also helps in digestion. Whatever food that you digest, it releases biochemical substances that helps you to digest properly. Right? If the liver is not there, obviously you can't digest anything. I'm not talking about eating, I'm talking about digesting. Huh? What else? Okay, hormones, 1 or 2. As a storage place. Okay. Red blood cells is also fine. Decomposition of red blood cells, hormone regulation. Tell me one more thing. Huh? Immunity. How does it help with immunity? How does the liver help with immunity? How does the liver help with immunity? Bye when Depa, just tell me something. Tell me the definition that you all know. How does the liver help with immunity? Okay, and also it helps storage of glycogen. Right? Glycogen glucose conversion also happens there. Right? So those are the main rather important functions of the liver. Haridhar, next class, whatever that you all didn't answer, I'm going to ask first. Tell me about hyperplasia. What is hyperplasia? What do you define as hyperplasia? We'll try to finish at least this off. Increase in the number of cells. Right? Hyperplasia. Hypertrophy is increase in the cell mass. Right? So this will lead to increased number of cells. What happens then? If there is increased number of cells, what's going to happen? The number of cells increases, what happens? Huh? The number of cells increases, what happens? Number of cells increases and then it leads to what? It can lead to cancer also, right? At point If it's inside an organ, then the organ size will increase, right? And then it will either cause a neoplasia or a benign tumor, right? If the number of cells increase more than what is being requested, more than what is in demand for, then you can always lead to cancer. What is metaplasia? What is metaplasia? Give me an example for metaplasia. What do you define as metaplasia? Replacement of one cell by another cell. That is what you call metaplasia, right? If it's an immature cell, right, then another type of cell, another type of matured cell will come and replace it, right? Replacement of one cell by a different type of cell is what you call metaplasia. Okay, give me an example for that. If you talk about the airway, right, example, I'll give you an example. If you talk about the airway, right, normally what type of cells are found in the airway? Normally. What type of cells are found in your? What type of cells? What's squamous epithelium? What type of? You have squamous epithelium or you have columnar epithelium in your airway? You have columnar epithelium, right? And then due to a certain reason it is been replaced by squamous epithelium. Something such as smoking, right? A cause or a reason that is going to damage your airway, right? So replacement of one type of cell due to a reason by another type of cell is what you call metaplasia. Okay? Clear? Questions? Right? So those are the cellular adaptations, how it's going to adapt, right? This is a basic, I don't know why it's not clear, but right, atrophy is where it's right on top. You can see the normal cell compared to atrophic cell, right? Hypertrophy, metaplasia. What is dysplasia? What do you mean by dysplasia? That was not in this thing, but what do you mean by dysplasia? What do you mean by dysplasia? The other ones you know, hypertrophy, metaplasia, atrophy, hyperplasia, all those you know. What is dysplasia? Dysplasia is an abnormality in development. That is why you see different sizes of cells. If there is an abnormality in this growth, right, then you call it dysplasia. Clear? Right? Right? These are some few examples comparing. If you talk about atrophic in muscles, right? This is a normal muscle, and then you see atrophy muscle, right? Same thing with the nucleus, right? Between the normal and the atrophy. We talk about hypertrophy, right? Hypertrophy is increase of cell mass, right? So this is a comparison between a normal heart and a hypertrophic heart. Right? This is something that you can do, right? Pathological and physiological examples for atrophy, hypertrophy, hyperplasia and metaplasia. Something that you can do for further study. Right? Okay, tell me about, we can't finish everything, but tell me about irreversible cell injury. When you say irreversible cell injury, what are the two names that pops into your head? What are the two conditions? What are the two? Necrosis and? Not atrophy. Atrophy is not irreversible. Atrophy is irreversible. Necrosis and? Necrosis and apoptosis. Now tell me what necrosis is. Like I said, these are general medical terms. What do you define as necrosis? Huh? What do you mean by necrosis? Loss of total function of the cells or the tissue. Any other definition? What do you mean by necrosis? Right? Necrosis is loss of function. It's a type of cell injury. Right? It's a type of cell injury which results in premature death of cells. Right? The cells start dying before its original time. Right? Premature death of cells is what we call necrosis. Right? It can be due to toxins, can be different types of infections. Right? Give me a few examples for necrosis. What are the? Have you all seen any patients with necrosis? MI, yes. Okay. What else? What else? What are the other types of necrosis? Not types of necrosis, sorry. Necrotic patients that you all have seen. Types are different. Decrease tissue what? And necrosis no. Right? Okay, whatever you all said was right. Cell death as a result of toxic injury or ischemia. Okay, like I said, it can be also due to infections, right? Various other substances, processes that can destroy cells. Right? It's characterized by cell rupture, spilling of contents into ECF, inflammation. What is ECF? Okay, cell rupture and then inflammation and spilling of contents into ECF. Those are the characteristics of necrosis. Right? Necrosis is irreversible. Okay? Necrosis is irreversible. Okay, we have four main types when we talk about necrosis. First is coagulative, liquefactive, fatty necrosis and caseous necrosis. You all have heard about this or not? No. Okay, coagulative necrosis is it's something like formation of a gel inside the structure. Okay, it's irreversible. You can't just because you pull out the gel doesn't mean that your cells will go back to normal state. But formation of something like a gel, right, is what you call coagulative necrosis. All right. You will see these kind of examples in infarct patients with infarctions or low oxygenated environments, right? You know that cells need oxygen to survive, right? Areas where there are low oxygen, then you can find coagulative necrotic patients, all right, or necrotic patients in the coagulative type. Okay, your book should have, yeah, page 18 has a table with all 4 types. Page 18 in your book has all 4 tables. Right? Coagulative, they say the most common type of tissue necrosis, yeah, it is the common type where manifestations are identical regardless of cause of cell death. Right? Characteristics: affected site is made up of denatured proteins and is relatively, right? Here coagulative infarcts, right? Mostly happens in solid organs, right? Mainly happens in solid organs such as heart, spleen, kidney, liver, and so on and so forth. Okay? Liquefactive necrosis, right? Liquefactive necrosis. Liquefactive necrosis is where the dead cells, right, form into a liquid mass, right? The dead cells start accumulating and they form into a liquid mass. That is what we call liquefactive necrosis, right? You find these kind of things in brain ischemia or abscesses. You know what an abscess is, neither? Right? Liquefactive necrosis, right? Also something equal to pus. You know what pus is, ne? Yes, no? What is pus? You know what pus is or you don't know? You know what it is. What is it? What is pus? It's a yellow kind of liquid. How does it form? Microorganisms, what? Okay, dead cells. Due to a bacteria or fungi or whatever it is, right? The accumulation of dead leukocytes. That's what it formed into pus, a yellowish, a pale yellow color, fluid kind of thing, right? That is what you call pus. So in this case, you have pus falling into liquefactive necrosis, right? Such as abscesses or brain ischemia. Okay. Third is fatty necrosis. What do you mean by fatty necrosis? You have the answer in your word itself. Fatty necrosis. It's necrosis of the fat tissue, whatever you have in your body, right? Resulting from the action of activated lipase. You know what lipase is, no? I'm not going to ask. Right? Activation of, you write it down and you search it. Activation of lipase will cause fatty necrosis. You have, in these conditions, you have something like acute pancreatitis, right? And then caseous necrosis, the last one. Caseous necrosis. It's a combination of the first two. Caseous is the combination of first two, that is the coagulative and liquefactive, right? Both together is what is going to cause caseous necrosis. Okay, so these four types, you all know what it is. That's all you need to know. Just the definition of it. If you asked what caseous necrosis is, you need to define what caseous necrosis is. Clear? Questions? Any questions from what we have done up to this point so far? If so, hands up. Any questions? තේරෙන්නේ මුකුත්ම තේනවද උදේ ඉඳන් කරපො? No? Okay. So the rest will continue for next week, right? You all have a class in the afternoon. So you all have your lunch break and then we'll continue. I don't know when I will have again, but continue from the second class. Read about gangrenes and come when you come for the next class.